What's up, guys? My name is Nathan Long, and we are currently in quarantine. I think everybody knew that. But anyway, so there's no Stanley Cup playoffs going on, even though they technically would be going on right now. They are not. Baseball's not going on. No sports are going on. But pretty much nothing's going on. So I thought I would take this time to make a couple videos on the playoffs last year, specifically the Boston Bruins run of last year, because they made it all the way to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, where I believe they won, they won that game, it was a pretty fantastic run. It was fun for me, very fun for me. I'm sure fun for a lot of other people, but I'm going to get into their first series last year, which was the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'll do this series by series. So they, it was said that they were going to play the Toronto Maple Leafs, and all I heard on TSN that week was, or all I heard on YouTube that week, I should say, from TSN was, the Boston Bruins are too much for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I watched everybody's video, and pretty much it was the same script from the year before. Boston in 7. Boston's going to win in 7. And I picked that. I did a preview on this channel. I said Boston's going to win in 7. So I go to school, and I'm the only kid wearing, I think I was wearing a Bruins jersey that day. So I was wearing a Boston Bruins jersey that day, and I'm the only kid in the school that's a Boston Bruins fan. Keep in mind, this is Lancaster. I live in Long Beach now, but then I lived in Lancaster, and Lancaster is just desert, and if there are hockey fans there, they're either Anaheim Ducks fans or LA Kings fans. So I'm walking around with a Zdeno Chara jersey on, and I think it was my history class before game 1. I went in, and he said, "Oh, Boston's going to lose to Toronto. Go Leafs." He's a Kings fan normally, but I guess he was rooting for the Toronto Maple Leafs in this series. And I'm not going to give his name, but he was a pretty cool teacher. We talked about hockey pretty much every day, like after class. I mean, it was pretty cool. But he told me that Toronto's going to lose. And I said, no, it's going to be Boston in 7 and this and that. And Boston's going to win. And he goes, no, you're wrong. Toronto's going to win. Somewhere along the conversation, he asked me what candy I like. And I said, oh, I like Hershey's chocolate bar. And he goes, okay, so if Boston wins, I'll get you a Hershey chocolate bar. And I said, okay, and what if Toronto wins? And he goes, then I'll get you, And I said, what if Toronto wins? And he said, then I like almond Hershey chocolate bars. So I said, okay, I'll get you that if Toronto wins. So we went, okay. And I went on with my class, and I ended up going on. And sure enough, I go home to watch the Toronto-Boston game in Boston, and Toronto wins 3-1. And I go, crap, that is not good. Not just because I didn't want to lose the bet. That was part of it. But the other part of it was I wanted Boston to win. So I think, crap. And, of course, the next day he brags to me about it. How Toronto won. And, yeah, ha, ha, ha. And I go, okay. And my PE teacher sort of was a hockey fan. So he was watching the games, too. So he would talk with me about them, too. Sorry, just itched my leg, and, so I watched game 2, and Boston wins, and I go, oh, yeah, nice, they tied up the series, it's pretty good. We're heading back to Toronto, so I wasn't thrilled about it, but, I mean, I wasn't thrilled to be heading back to Toronto with just the series tied, but, you know, get what you get. So they go back to Toronto with the series tied. And Toronto wins, I think they won game 3. Yeah, it's a back and forth series, I believe. And I go, oh, crap. And obviously my history teacher bragging to me about it. Oh, they lost. And on the other side of this, Carolina Hurricanes and Washington Capitals on not a different side, but, in another series, they were playing each other. And my dad was actually going to those playoff games, which was pretty cool. Um, and, Ovechkin, right in that game, too, had knocked out the Russian guy. I don't exactly know how to say his name. You know who I'm talking about, though. 37. And everyone was like, oh, Ovechkin took it too far, blah, blah, blah. I don't think he took it too far. I could discuss that in another video, but I mean, it's done, it's over with, and, they didn't suspend him about it. They didn't suspend him for it, so obviously he didn't take it too far. I'm not going to discuss why I think that in this video, though. But he was there, my dad was there. My dad agreed with me. But that was pretty epic. I told him he was only going to 2 Carolina Hurricanes games because they were going to get swept. That did not happen. Carolina ended up winning that series in 7 games. I was furious that they won that series in 7 games. But anyway, back to Toronto and Boston. They win Game 3 in Toronto. And I'm like, no, this seems to be going back and forth. And so they win that. And I was in Game 4. Boston comes in and they tie the series, which was pretty good. So at this point, I'm like, even series. It's anybody's series in Game 5. It's really whoever wants it more will take it. I had already had an almond chocolate bar because at that point I was like, oh, it's a possibility that Boston's gonna lose this. And then game number 5 comes around. And I was in Long Beach for that game. I wasn't living here at the time, but I was still in Long Beach here. So I actually didn't watch Game 5 at the time. But I was there, and I was watching, and I was, looking at the NHL app religiously. And Toronto pulled it off. They won Game 5 in Boston, and I go, they may lose it in 6. That's a possibility that they will lose it in 6. And it was sad. I was kind of like, Boston. Because my whole motto was, if Boston meets up against Tampa in the second round, they're dead. But if Tampa goes out, then I think Boston might have a chance of winning the Stanley Cup. And Tampa got swept. I don't really know how, but magically they got swept by Columbus that year, which was just amazing. So everything was kind of falling into place except for that. Anyway, what was I saying? Sorry. I was in Monterey, for, I can't remember what for, but I was in Monterey for Game 6, so I didn't really watch Game 6 either, because I was, with my family and everything, because some of my family lives up in Monterey, so I did not watch Game 6, but I looked at it, and Boston's winning, and I go, great. They're gonna at least bring it to Game 7, but I really didn't have that much faith in Boston, right then, and then as I was driving back home, I really didn't, because I was driving back home when Game 6 was on, actually, and I forgot about that I was driving home when it was on, but, so they end up taking it to 7, and I was in I think at this point we had started testing in my school, so it was a weird schedule after that, but I was in my history class the day of Game 7, and my history teacher came by, and he was like, tonight's the night your team's going home, and I was like, I know, I have your Hershey almond chocolate bar ready, or whatever, and he was just thrilled that they were going to lose. He was so confident, too. And they go in, and Freddie Anderson looked he looked okay in the first period, but Toronto kind of crumbled in TD Garden, and Boston ended up beating them and going to the second round, and I was pretty happy. I ate that almond chocolate bar. I ended up eating that. I can't remember if it was then, but I ate it, and I ended up eating it. And the next day, I didn't see his class, so I didn't. I peeked into his class in like passing period, and I smiled at him, and he goes, "Hey Nathan, I owe you a candy bar." And I was like, "Yeah, you do." And he ended up giving it to me, and I ate it, of course. But then they were heading off to Columbus, and I will discuss that in another video. The Columbus Boston series was pretty epic, in itself, and I really liked that series, a lot. That was a pretty fun series. But I will discuss that in the next video. Anyway, bye guys. Thumbs up. Subscribe.